You're teaching on Wednesday. You got a 15-minute slot to teach on Wednesday, which means on Tuesday you're just going to have a practice run. Your practice on Tuesday. The whole of Tuesday will be practicing. Then you have 15 minutes. Other groups.
Oh yeah?
Which groups?
Well, we have Discovery, Evidence of God, Aish core classes, Difficult Issues, Hilchos Kirot, Spirituality. So there are 6 different groups. You're in one group, and then I think there's one person from each of the other group. You'll get together, 6 people, one from each of the groups, and then each person in the group teaches 15 minutes of what they learned in their group.
So cool.
That's really cool.
Very cool. So you've got to be able to give over the 7 wonders in 15 minutes. Or pig you can do.
Doesn't seem too.
You can do pig and fish. Or you could do this. Mass revelation. So we're going on to a new one. So the question has really been, before all of the prophecies came true and we knew that there was no other animal apart than pig, before all of that, why did Jewish people believe in Judaism? Where did it all start? So, fine. Have to ask ourselves the question, the revelation narrative. The revelation narrative. How do religions get started? How do religions get started? It's called the revelation narrative. So let's look at a few options. I'm going to do this a little bit quickly, but Christianity. Christianity started, Paul had a vision on his road to Damascus. We need to learn the whole of Christian history properly, but in general. We should do a whole course on just Christianity, when the Gospels were written, if the people who wrote the Gospels ever met Jesus, if all that. It's good to have a good timeline of that, and all the contradictions and stuff. But basically, you got Paul on the road to Damascus. Islam. How did Islam start? Muhammad. 610 CE. Muhammad had a revelation of the angel Gabriel. He says, for 27 years he kept having these revelations, and he shared them. Sikhism, which is an awesome religion, by the way. Guru Nanak had a revelation and he shared it. Mormonism, Joseph Smith had a revelation and he shared it. So there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of religions in the world. I didn't put Buddhism here because I don't know if Buddhism is a religion. Depends how you define religion. But still, Buddhism is Buddha reached enlightenment and he shared it. That's it.
Which time period?
2,500 years ago.
Around the same time as Torah's given?
Just after we believed this. So in general, how do religions start? You have one person who has some sort of revelation, and then they share the revelation, and it goes from there, and then it builds up from there.
Are there no other religions who don't, it's not one person having a revelation?
I don't know of any. I wonder how Hinduism, the very beginnings of Hinduism, how that started. I'm not sure. Yes.
How does Paul work in with the 4 Gospels?
The Gospels were written by John, Paul, George, and Ringo. Something like that.
Look at that.
I'm not sure. I have to look it up.
Okay. Because I heard that, even at the best estimate, they're written 50 years after.
60 years. I had 60 years, but the Gospels was definitely written long after the whole Jesus thing happened.
Yeah.
What's Gospels?
Other than Hindu, also was one a kid that walked around India with no shoes and everything.
The problem with Hinduism is there's actually not one thing called Hinduism. It's a Western term. It's just basically Indian stuff.
Wow.
That's what it means. There's there's a Vedanta, there's 6 orthodox schools of Hindu, what we call Hinduism, and they believe in the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita, and there are schools that don't. And we've just lumped the whole of their philosophy into this. So, let's have a mashal. Let's say there's a king, and the king has 3 sons. They're triplets. We don't know who's the oldest. He never told. And then the king dies, and the 3 sons are arguing who should be the new king. And then the whole nation gets involved and says, who should be the new king? Who should be the new king? And everyone's arguing. And then one day, one of the sons comes down, and he says, you won't believe what happened last night, but I had a dream. And our father came to me in a dream, and he says that I'm the new king. Is that good evidence? No. Could he get away with it?
Yes.
Yeah, I know. He's very charismatic, and he's like, I can't believe it. And he looked like this in the dream, and he said amazing things. However, if the father could come to people in dreams, who should he come to in the dream to tell who is the new king?
Oldest of those two brothers.
Pardon?
All of them.
All of them. I'd say definitely all the brothers, but I'd say the whole nation would be even better. The whole nation should have had a dream. If the whole nation had a dream, they all woke up and said, I just had a dream that Bob is going to be the new king. And everyone's like, oh my goodness, I had the same dream. Bob's going to be the new Bob. Then we know Bob's the new king. So none of these claims are very strong claims. I heard God speak. This is what he told me. Follow me is a claim that you can get away with. Why? It's not falsifiable. It's not a falsifiable claim. I can come along and say that there's no way to make it false, unless you then start saying, and God told me that pigs are the only animals on the face. Then now you've made it falsifiable. But there's nothing in the Quran and the Bhagavad Gita and the Christian Bible that can make it falsifiable. It's just a very little.
Are there discrepancies?
No, definitely in the Bible there's lots of discrepancies.
So
When did the resurrection happen? Where did the resurrection happen? Did it happen the day after, 40 days later, on the Mount of Olives? Lots of discrepancies.
So
Is
wouldn't
there
that be
Rashi?
wouldn't that be falsifiable?
Is there Rashi?
What
We have lots of issues in our
I know,
Bible. That's
I know.
this point for you.
I know, 100%. Rashi and Tosafos would definitely find a way to explain that. So really on the Bechina of Das, it was 40 days later, but in Chan, 100%. I agree.
Wait,
So
but is
They
it,
have
is it,
Christian commentators, like I assume that they have Christian commentators.
They have. We've got lots of. The Leib Kellerman was really into it. Leib Kellerman, he wrote to the Catholic Church, and they basically said, yeah, it's not true.
Said that it's not true that there's a lot of commentators.
No, I don't know. I'll find it's in a book somewhere. Find his book, Permission to Receive.
Oh, Lord's coming.
There's like they have the line of King David going down to Jesus, and they're like, but two different gospels have completely different genealogies, completely different number, completely different people. Apart from the father, both of them say Joseph. It's like, no, you said it's not Joseph. It doesn't. There's lots of things, but once again, I think Rashi and Tosafos would work out how to make that shtick. Someone once said to me, you know what? The whole of the oral Torah is just making excuses for the mistakes in the Torah. You've just got loads of really clever people over thousands of years who are making up midrashim and say, and that really means this, and that really means that, and it can't be because we know there was an oral Torah. I can prove there was an oral Torah. I know it was transmitted in the right way, and I know that we don't want to make stuff up. And we've got answer to that question, but it's a fair question. It's a fair question. Okay.
so Rabbi, just to clarify, the fact that there's discrepancies, that doesn't mean that it's falsifiable.
I think it's a big problem, but as we just said, there are discrepancies in the Torah as well that we explain away. That's why I don't mention it. I don't talk about it. I'm just sticking to what I'm talking about now.
And our explanations, but you can justify. You said you could rationalize our explanations, but their explanations can't be rationalized.
Pardon? No,
Our
I reckon
explanations-
if they had Rashi and Tosafos, they could. They didn't have clever enough people to rationalize it. We're clever enough to do it.
Isn't that in of itself?
No, it just says that we're really clever. Okay, fine. So here we go. So there's only one religion that ever didn't make that claim. There's one religion, that's us, that says no. The whole of the Jewish people, man, woman, and child, they all heard God speak at Mount Sinai. We have this event 3,338 years ago. It claims that God spoke to the Jewish people. Every single Jew heard God speak. That's a unique claim amongst world religions. No one else makes that claim. Everyone else says, I heard God speak, basically, or I reached enlightenment, or I had some sort of revelation, and you should follow it. So it's a unique claim. Now, which is a stronger claim? I heard God speak, or the whole nation heard God speak? The whole nation heard God speak is clearly a very much stronger. So if you were going to make up a religion, which claim would you use? I heard God speak, or we all heard God speak?
I heard.
I would use the claim that we all heard God speak, because that's a really, really, really good claim. It's a very strong, powerful claim to make, whereas the I heard God speak is not a powerful claim at all.
But it's hard to prove that 2 million people heard.
Very hard. In fact, I'd say it's impossible, and therefore we know it must have happened. That's the whole class. So the first question has to be, why didn't any other religion start with this narrative? It's a better narrative. For me, I'd ask that question.
Because they all came way later, and it was really easy to fake. It would
No,
have
they
been
could've
too
got-
hard to fake that.
No, let's copy it. I just copy it.
It would have been.
They-
It would have
if
been
they-
easily documented.
If we got away with it, then they can.
Well, you're assuming the other religions are fake. What do you mean? You know, saying for unbiased, they wouldn't like lie. They would say what happened. Like Muhammad wouldn't lie about the whole nation being spoken to because only he was spoken to.
Yeah.
What do you mean? So why would you assume he'd make a claim that didn't actually happen?
I'm saying you're correct. But
Yeah,
if-
so you're assuming the other ones are false, meaning they'd only claim it if they claim that it happened.
They'd only claim it if they claimed that it
Yeah,
happened.
that's a stupid lie. Yeah, that makes no sense. But you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I do understand. Right, good. So one answer might be, well, it didn't happen, and they. Correct. In terms of the Jewish people, what happened is the question is, how can you get away with this claim if it didn't happen? That's what we're asking. Is there a way to make this claim if it didn't happen? Because Judaism makes that claim, and we've had at least 1 million people for the last 3,000 years who believe that God spoke to all of them. So the question is, how do you get away with a national event that didn't really happen? So it means it either did happen, so it's just been passed down, or it didn't happen and someone convinced the whole nation that it did, unless you can think of a third option. It either happened and it got passed down, or it didn't happen, but somehow we got this legend. Someone at some point in history started a legend, so we've got a pre-existing religion, and over time, into the religion we get this story. At what point in the unbroken chain of Jewish history, we have an unbroken chain from Moshe to you, by the way, going through your rabbis, unbroken. At what point did this story start being believed by a whole nation? That's our question. Yes.
I was gonna say.
You know what? I'm just going to give the presentation, and if you have questions, you can ask them.
No, it's an addition.
Hmm.
Maybe there's like some kind of secret word that you wrote that everybody knows what that word means because they all speak the same language and it means just.
Okay, we're going to answer all your questions.
Okay.
So this is my question now. How do you get away with starting this story? And if you could get away with it, why didn't anyone else get away with it? So you're saying they were just honest. It didn't happen, so I'm not even going to try and get away with it. I don't need to get away with it. So here we go. How could someone convince a whole nation to believe in a national event that didn't actually happen? That's our question. Who else believes that God spoke to all the Jews at Mount Sinai, apart from religious Jews?
Christians.
Christians and Muslims.
Fine.
So you've got a large percentage of the world's population who honestly believes that God spoke to the Jewish people at Mount Sinai. How did that happen? How did it become a belief? Now, I don't know, how many religious Jews are there today? 1 million? 2 million? There's about
Like 7 million.
7 million religious Jews? No, they're not. There are 15 million Jews. About 2% are religious. Whatever. But there are 1 million Jews who believe that God spoke to the whole of the Jewish people around Sinai. Why do we believe that? So, this is how I'm working it out. Either one person or a few people convince the whole nation, you all heard God speak, your ancestors, someone heard God speak, or it just starts slowly like any legend. It just, it gets put in and then it gets expanded, and that person tells his kid and they add another little part of the story, and then they add another bit of the story, and eventually you've just got this legend that built up like every other legend builds up, and then that's how it starts. So we're going to have a look.
What about sorcery?
Yep, could happen. Watch. So here is where it starts. Let's say it doesn't happen. I'm the author of the Torah. Yes.
Yeah. Can you just who's the you all heard God speak? You're saying you're assuming that there's a people called
The Jewish people.
and somebody's speaking to them. That's what you're assuming.
Yeah. So we're just going to play out every scenario how I can get this story started. So let's say I'm Moshe, your leader, and at some point in history I want to persuade the whole nation and say, you all heard God. You all heard God speak. Could I get away with that? Could I say to a whole nation, you all heard God speak? Which the Torah says. It says in the Torah, You all heard God speak. We got to work out. Now we know the Torah was completed at least 2,500 years ago. Some point, this book says in it, you all heard God. Someone is saying to someone at some time in history, you all heard God speak. So let's play all the situations out. I'm Moshe. I'm living 2,500 years ago, or whatever, and I come up to the nation. We know that 2,500 years ago there were millions of people who believed that the Jewish people all heard God speak. We're just trying to ask, how did that belief begin? So one way that it might happen is I come and stand up and I say, you all heard God speak. Can I get away with that? No. Why can't I get away with that? So it's called the Applewhite theorem. The Applewhite theorem is that you can persuade someone of something that's not falsifiable. If there's no evidence for it, I can persuade you. But I can't persuade you against the evidence. I can't tell you that something major happened to you and get away with the whole nation if it didn't happen. So for example, you all know that I lived in Asia for 6 years, and I did martial arts, and there are lots of stories that you should all buy my book. Now, one thing I didn't put in my book was that I walked across a tightrope across the tallest waterfall in Korea. I didn't put it in the book, but I did. I walked across a tightrope, and because I got a black belt in Taekwondo, I balanced very well. It was an amazing event. It was awesome.
Were you held on?
Is there a video of this?
Pardon?
Obviously.
Were you
Oh, obviously not.
visible or something? No.
No, I was
Holy
just walking.
holy-
Just
you felt
walking.
you would die or something?
Yeah.
So is there
Again.
any evidence?
Pardon?
Any
Good.
evidence?
So, could I get away with that story?
You get evidence.
Yeah.
No.
Yes.
In
Yeah.
fact,
Yeah.
in fact, some of you already believe it. Some of you are like, hold on, what is the biggest waterfall in Korea? And I'd be like, forgotten the name. And you say, is there any video of it? And I say, we did. In those days, we didn't have cameras so much. There's no video of it. Anyway, I could probably get away with it. I could get away with it. How about this? You all walked across the highest waterfall in Korea.
Yeah,
You'd be like,
No way.
I did that. Yeah.
so fine, so you can't do it. Why is it called the Applewhite theorem? Because there was something called the Heaven's Gate cult. In America, you should look it up. Very, very weird, very, very sick. And apparently all the people in the cult were actually educated people. And he basically persuaded them that they have to cut off their balls.
Yeah.
And they did. And he said, and the only way you're going to get into the spaceship that is going to take us to heaven is to kill yourself. And they did. Just look it up. It's very weird. Heaven's Gate cult. Pardon?
Black Nike shoes.
Anyway, so he said to them, he didn't say to them, the spaceship that brought your mother to Earth is coming to collect us. Why not?
Because they could ask them all.
Because they'll ask their mother. So he didn't say that. So it's called the Applewhite theorem now, which means I can get people to do the craziest things ever, as long as it's not falsifiable. My claim is not falsifiable. I can get you to cut off your balls and kill yourself. But I can't get you to do something that goes against the evidence. It's easily falsifiable. So the present lie, you all heard God speak. I can't get away with that. So we know that that's not how the story started. So then there's something called the past lie. Past lie is much better than the present lie. The past lie says, you didn't hear God speak. Obviously not. But your ancestors, all of our ancestors heard God speak at Mount Sinai. The question is, at what point in Jewish history did someone say that? Everyone's walking around, and then suddenly I'm Moshe Dov Ber, and I come and say, your ancestors heard God speak. All of your ancestors, 3 million people, 2 million people, whatever it is, they all heard God speak in Mount Sinai. Can I get away with that?
Yeah, in the desert, when the generation died.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, good. I can get away with it. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks. Maybe back to Thailand. Can you think a little bit? Come on, you think.
Ask your parents.
Why they never told me?
Why didn't they? Good. Exactly. So the basic thing is, I've just told you the most significant event in human history that ever happened to all of our ancestors. You would at some point say, "Oh, that's interesting. Why didn't I hear about that?" So if I said to you now, your grandfather was the president of America, you'd probably say to me, "Oh, well, when I heard that." So if I come along and say you all heard, you didn't hear God speak, but all of our ancestors heard God speak, you'd go and ask your grandfather and say, "Hey, grandfather, did you hear about this?" And he'd be like, "No." And he'd be like, "I think that guy is lying." You you can't suddenly we're going to work out the starting it slowly, but you can't convince a whole nation that their ancestors all heard God speak. So suddenly, at what point in history do you suddenly introduce this story? Everyone would be like, why didn't anyone tell us? Surely we'd know this story. Surely this would be our foundational story. And by the way, that book itself says you have to tell the story of leaving Egypt like every day, and you've got a whole festival. And what, they forgot to tell me about that? You're suddenly sticking this crazy national event into a story. At what point in history could you possibly do that? And I didn't hear about it ever before. Not on Pesach, not on the... So you pass down everything. I'm putting on tefillin every day. You pass down all our traditions. You pass down Abraham Mitzvah. You pass down everything. You just forgot to pass down this, the most significant event ever. So very, very difficult. You can't just put that in history. Yes?
Just to clarify the situation, you're saying there's already a Jewish people, and we're trying to convince them.
No, we're going to do later. Our next thing is, let's start slowly. We said there are two options. No, the first option is there's already a Jewish people. How do I persuade an already Jewish people nation that they all heard God speak? There are two ways. Either I say you heard God speak, or I say yes, I heard God speak. I tell my son and my daughters, my daughter and my sons, that God spoke to all the Jewish people at Mount Sinai. I tell them that. Actually, why? How? And I believe that. Why do I believe that? And why do we have an unbroken chain of people believing that?
Who says the unbroken chain of people?
Well, I'll show you the unbroken chain.
How would there be a Jewish people that you're talking to?
There's some tribe in the desert. We're doing
Just a tribe that's bound
the
by...
Jewish people started somewhere at some time. We have no other option apart from what the Torah says how it started, by the way. There's no other historical option for how the Jewish people started. So far. So, we're going to do the slow build-up. Don't worry, we're going to get to this. And I'll send you the unbroken transition. So this is what they say. There's a gap theory. Do you know why you didn't hear about this before? It's because actually God spoke to all the men, women, and children, and then that whole generation passed away. They all died. There was some catastrophe. There was a meteor. There was an earthquake. Something happened, and they all died. And I've now come to bring back the tradition. I come back to I'm the last remaining member, or I found the scroll that tells us about it, and here's the scroll. And this is what happened to our people, and that's why you were never told about it. Could you get away with that? It's called the gap theory. Actual biblical critics call it the gap theory.
So that's right.
So
Then we would know about that guy.
Good. So there are three problems with the gap theory. Number one, who are we?
Who or what?
Who are we? If they all died, then we wouldn't exist. How do we have, however many we are now, there's 200,000 people, and I've just told those 200,000 people, all of your ancestors died in an earthquake. And then I found the thing. So it doesn't make sense. You wouldn't exist. Second problem is what you said. Who's that guy? He'd be famous. And I'll give you the sheet on Ezra. And the third biggest problem is, let's say the religion started like that. I persuaded a whole bunch of people and said that God spoke to all the Jewish people in the desert, and then they all died in an earthquake, and I've now come to bring back the story. What would that mean if that's how the religion started? What would I be telling my children at Pesach? I'd be telling them that God spoke to all the Jewish people and then they all died. But I don't say that. I don't have that. They can't be how the religion started because that's not the story. Did you understand that third point? It's a very important third point.
No, did you say?
No, because can you just tell us to not talk about that part?
Yeah. Can you just say that?
Why? That's the whole story. I've just started a religion by saying God spoke to all the people, they all died, and now I've come back. Now I've come back to bring the religion back. Then that would be how the religion, that's the founding story of the religion. I've just founded a religion based on the story that a whole nation died, and then I came back and I reintroduced the religion. So I should tell that to my story. And he said, oh, by the way, guys, don't pass that very major part of the story in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is
What if it was like 10 people? We're like, guys, we're gonna be like the strongest people. Like you just have
No,
to follow this religion.
we're doing the full nation. We're going to do the slow build up soon.
Oh, sorry.
what's the difference between the second and the third point?
The first point is who are we? We wouldn't exist. If everyone died, we wouldn't exist. The second point is that person would be the most famous person on the face of the planet.
Right.
He's the guy who brought Judaism back. That's why some people want to say Ezra. That's why we have to do that whole Ezra thing. And the third point is, well, why don't we have that as part of our story that everyone died? That would be a foundational part of the Jewish story, that we all died in the desert, and then someone came and brought back
the fact that everyone died.
Yeah, that would be part of my story. Yes?
Wasn't one of the first one? You just say we're not blood related to the Jews.
No, but we said they're your ancestors. Otherwise, I'd start the
They all
story
died. We're saying so whoever this was found a bunch of random people.
and start it again. But he wouldn't have said your ancestors. He would say these Jewish people, and we're going to carry on their tradition. But he doesn't. He says it's your ancestors. Right, let's just keep going, and then we'll ask all the questions. So why didn't I hear about this before? Gap theory. How were we alive? No catastrophe in our story. Who was the guy who brought it back? Okay, that's where we got so far. So I can't get away with saying you all heard God speak, and I can't get away with our ancestors that all heard God speak, because I would have heard about it, and then you can't say, well, you didn't hear about it because they all died because of these three problems. Past life doesn't work. That don't work. Slow build up. Let's go for the slow build up. So we just got 10 families living in the Middle East, and they say, why don't we start a religion, and we're going to teach our children that all our ancestors heard God speak. Oh, very great. So we got 10 families, and they all have 5 children, and so that's 50 children. Very good at math. So now I've got 50 children, and they all go to kindergarten, and I say, hey kids, we're the best nation in the world. We were slaves in Egypt, and then 2 million of our ancestors, they heard God speak, and our whole people heard it, and they're like amazing. And then they grow up, and then you got 50 children, and they each have 5 children, or they'd have to marry each other again, whatever. 25. So anyway, in the second generation, you've got 125 people, and then third generation. So by the time I got the fourth generation, I've got like 2,000 people who all believe in this story. I've just built up this religion. This is how all legend starts, and now now the religions have started, and I have all these children who have grown up believing that the 2 million ancestors heard God speak a Mount Sinai. Could that work?
Where are they?
Pardon?
The kids would have went outside to ask anybody, like, oh, we're the chosen people, and somebody said, you don't exist. We never heard of you ever.
And where is everyone else?
No. My question would be, how come there are only 2,000 of us? What happened to the 3 million people in Mount Sinai? Where are all the children? How did our nation go from 2 million to 2,000?
The motivation of the people. Yes.
Pardon?
What's the motivation? You want to say this?
Power.
Moshe Rabbeinu.
Whatever. I think you could. I just want to start my own religion. Power. Well, I want something. But yes, I don't see great motivation. But I think the number one question is, how did those 2 million people turn into 2,000 people? What happened? Where they all died? Immediate. So what's the problem with saying that?
From our perspective?
What's what?
What's the problem with saying that?
You're
That would be
implying
part of the
wasn't
story. That would be part of the story. Then I'd be teaching Tamara, Binyamin, and Shimshon, and I'd say that there was a meteor that killed them, and it's only 2,000 were left. I don't have that as part of my story.
Why can't you learn that the pasuk that talks about 600,000 people was not actually 600,000, a smaller number? They
Then
were
that's
so
what I
big,
teach my
it's
children.
like there were
No,
600,000
that's what I teach my children. But I don't. The problem with starting the religion, however you want to say the religion started, that's what the story you're going to be Be'ezrat Hashem passing on to your children. But we don't pass that story on to our children. We got a very, very specific story that I'm passing on to my children.
You say that came all after Torah.
Pardon?
Like the destruction of all the people, that came way after. That wouldn't be part of the
Where did it come? I just don't have that story. The future lie, we haven't mentioned the future lie because the future lie doesn't work. The future lie is this: you didn't hear God speak, and your ancestors didn't hear God speak, but in the future God's going to speak to the whole nation. Why does that lie not work? Because that's not what we tell our children. We don't tell our children we are going to hear God speak. We tell our children they all heard God speak. Hey, Shiach, fine. What happened to where are all the descendants? Okay, now this is actually where it gets good. Everything up until now is interesting. I think this is actually the main takeaway. I want you to think of any viable option of how you could get a whole nation at some point to believe that a whole nation heard God speak. I want you to now think, I'm going to give you 2 minutes to speak to the person next to you. If there's no one next to you, speak to yourself. Speak to them. give any scenario of how you could get a whole. And remember, we've got 2 million very educated, intelligent Jewish people now who still believe that God spoke to a whole nation. And that's going back for many, many thousands and thousands of years. We've had basically a large amount of human beings believing that God spoke to a whole nation. I want you to come up with any viable, natural explanation of how I could make this happen, how a nation could be, if it didn't actually happen. It didn't happen, but somehow it became part of my story. Go, you speak to him. Oh.
I'm trying to think about it.
You hypnotize them. Their kids will be like,
Come up with any scenario. Make up the scenario. How did this start? How did this story begin? That's your task.
Where does it say?
That's the whole parasha. All that is said. Very
Where are Where's everyone?
No, it's all Moshe pulls out the picture. It's like a massive machine gun. Why Moshe? Let's just say, it doesn't matter who it is. Pulls up with a massive machine gun. Well, that's not my story, actually. Now they're all forced to
Here we go. Okay, let's go. Here are my options. If you have any more, let me know. I'm going to add them to my PowerPoint. Number 1. Started as a small event, embellished over time. Something did happen. There was an amazing something, and we just made it bigger and bigger. That could happen. Dictator forced people to believe. You have to believe this, otherwise I'll kill you. So believe it, I'll kill you. Hypnotize, brainwash to believe. You can hypnotize, you've seen those hypnotist things that make people like to do chickens. So basically there was a very charismatic leader or a sorcerer or whatever it was, and he just made everyone believe somehow. Drug mushroom trip, ayahuasca. So basically you got some slaves, they're in the desert, they're hungry, they found some mushrooms, they eat the mushrooms, and they all believe that, and the guy leading the trip said that was God speaking to you. I tried this with a group once, a yeshiva group, gave them all like mushrooms. They didn't have the same trip.
Really? Did you actually?
No, we didn't.
3 million people got together to tell a mass lie. This is my favorite one. This is my favorite one. My favorite one is, there was thunder and light, there was some event, and then the charismatic leader said, you all heard God speak, that was God. And they were like, no, that was thunder and light. And you say, no, the thunder was real. I speak the language of God, and God said, Anochi Hashem a little bit hard to get away with because it says these are the words, but why not? I'm your leader, you trust me, and it was a real thunder and lightning thing, and I said this is the best. I think this is the best one. And maybe the guy himself was even convinced. He really thought it was. Maybe it wasn't a lie at all. Maybe it wasn't a lie. This guy actually thought that there could be, but this is the best one. I like this. Added this belief later onto an already existing religion, Ezra, whatever. We really got to do Ezra. You know what? Tomorrow, Blineda, we're gonna do Ezra.
Isn't tomorrow's last class?
No, tomorrow, and then Tuesday you practice, Wednesday you teach. So I think we'll do Ezra tomorrow. So good. Anyone got any other options of how this started? Yeah?
I mean, this kind of ties into Ezra, but what about like other possible options like Yoshia?
Yeah, that's the Ezra thing.
Okay.
If you don't know what that is, they found a scroll and they read and it was Devarim and they were panicked and that whole story. Okay, so let's put that in there. Yoshiyahu, but I think that's added this belief later to an already existing religion.
Yeah, I think I don't have this like fully spelled out, but I don't know. I mean, you mentioned a few days ago that you don't think there's spirituality without Judaism, and I don't know. Like I feel like there is, and I feel like a lot of
No, I think there is. You can meditate, but if the Torah is true, and you're not putting on tefillin, then you'll never have true spirituality, because spirituality means feeding your soul, and if you're not putting on tefillin, you're not feeding your soul. But I think that's spirituality. I lived in Asia for 6 years. I think the Hindus are very spiritual. But just once you define spirituality as identifying as and feeding your soul, the Torah is the guide to spirituality. So if you're not following it, you're not spiritual. That's it. You're kind of spiritual. You're like spiritual. You're spiritual, but you're not spiritual. Let's just quickly finish. We don't have so much. So watch this. Here, 2 questions. Whatever natural scenario you came up with right now, any natural scenario you came up with right now, we're going to have 2 questions. And the easier it is, the stronger the questions. If you're like, what do you mean? It's so easy to get away with. First question is, why didn't anyone else do it? Second thing is the question. Why would the people who just got away with it in a natural way claim that it will never happen again? The Torah doesn't just say that God spoke to all of the Jewish people. It then makes the claim that no one's going to make this claim ever again. No one's ever going to claim that God spoke to them. No one's going to start a religion by saying the creator of the universe spoke to our whole nation. That's a very strange claim to make. I'll tell you why. It's the same as all the other claims. It's a very strange claim to make, because you don't gain by saying that. I've already persuaded a whole nation somehow that they all heard God speak. What am I gaining by saying that no one else will make this claim? But more importantly, what am I risking by saying that no one else will make this claim? It's falsifiable now. If anyone else for the rest of history makes a claim that the creator of the universe spoke to their whole nation, then I've just messed up my whole book. And all you could do is 200 years later, someone will come along and just make the same claim. Why not? I want to disprove their book. So let's do what they did, ayahuasca trip, dictator, Ezra, added on later, whatever natural scenario you want to say. I just got away with it with a natural scenario. So someone else is going to do the same thing. He was a magician. He was very charismatic. There was thunder and lightning. So Muhammad could have seen thunder and lightning and said to them all, that was God speaking. Anyone could do anything. So why am I making a claim that no one's going to make the claim that I just made the claim if I just made the claim myself in a natural way?
Where does it say that?
Devarim 4:25 to 33. So this is Moshe. Moshe is speaking to the Jewish people on the banks of the River Jordan. And he's speaking about the future. This is a prophecy as well. When you beget children, hello, Moshe is speaking to the whole Jewish people. When you beget children, and children's children, and you'll be long established in the land, and you'll become corrupt and make a graven image, likeness of anything, you'll do evil and like that. So you're going to get into the land. This is before they got into the land. You're going to get into the land. And basically you're going to be exiled. This is our thing. The Lord will scatter you amongst the people. And you will remain few in number amongst the nations. Back to 7 wonders. So now he's talking about well into the future. When you are distressed and all these things happen to you in the end of days. So end of days is we say now, but what it could be. So he's saying in the end of days, then you're going to return to the Lord and obey him. Mamash Aish Discovery. For ask now regarding the early days that were before you, since the day that God created man upon the earth, and from one end to the other to the heavens, whether there was anything like this great thing, or was the likes of it heard? Did ever a people hear God's voice speaking out of the midst of the fire? But you heard and lived. Go to the people at the end of days. You're going to come. He's basically saying, come to the year 2026, 5786, and go around to every religion, every person on the face of the planet, and say, did your religion start with God speaking to the whole people? No one will say yes. That's the claim that the person who wrote the Torah made. Now he himself just somehow got away, or somehow the religion got away with this idea, so he knows it can be done. So why is he making the claim that no one's ever going to do it? And now we're at the end of days, and it's true. If you go around the whole world and you ask, did you all hear God speak? Did your religion start by hearing God speak? No one's going to say yes. Christians don't say that God spoke to everyone. They say that God's, I don't know what they say. Well, I do know what they say. Why did Muhammad not say you all heard God speak? Because they didn't, and he knew he couldn't get away with it. So you, having got away with the claim yourself somehow, whatever natural explanation you could possibly come up with, and the easier, the stronger this question is, why are you now saying in your book that no one else is going to do it? You did it. You know it can be done. So you're not gaining anything by saying it, and you're risking everything by saying it, because someone could just do what you did. Yes.
Has anyone ever brought you in all these years a nation that has had
There are 3 major claims out there that we'll address. One is the Aztec claim. The Aztecs claim that some bird-type god spoke to them. Another one is Lakota Indians, the white buffalo calf woman story. She's called the white buffalo calf woman. Those are the main ones. The Aztec and the Lakota.
The third?
The third isn't a claim like this, but there's something called the miracle of the sun. That happened in 1917. I'll send you. It's mamish crazy. It is crazy. The miracle of the sun is crazy. But it's still not God speaking to a whole nation starting a religion, but it is a crazy, seemingly supernatural event. I'll send it to you. There were these shepherd children somewhere, I think in Italy, shepherd who kept saying that the Virgin kept coming to them, and they said in 3 days' time there's going to be a crazy thing, and about 10,000 people gathered, and a crazy thing happened.
Whoa.
But it still doesn't strike this up. It's not Hashem.
That's still pretty cool.
It's very cool.
It's very cool.
Very good. The miracle of it. Look it up on Wikipedia. The miracle of the sun. Yes.
If the Jews are making this claim, if someone came up later and made the same claim, would they just say, well, you wrote a bunch of lies? You lied.
No, because we said the claim. It's even, no one's going to make the claim. So you just have to make the claim. It's not saying that it had to happen. It's, even if they made the claim, we're shlepped up. This is the actually powerful point about the class. For me, the whole class rotates around the second thing, not the first thing. The second thing. That who in their book is going to say that no one else is going to do what I just did? You don't get it. Just say nothing. And then if someone else says God spoke to us all, we'd be like, okay, so he spoke to you all. We don't believe he spoke to you all. This is the power thing of this. Yes?
What does it mean God like spoke?
That's a good spiritual good. Rabbi Tzadok says that Hashem's it was our own voice in our head. Everyone heard God in their own voice in their own head. But maybe we can say the Pashut Pshat. There was a very loud voice that came out of heaven saying, I am the Lord your God who took you out of Egypt. But it could have been an echo chamber. It was in the desert. Someone could have just said, I am the Lord your God. Took you out of the land of Egypt. Moshe could do magic. So Moshe could have just staged the whole thing, some crazy echo chamber in the desert. What's your answer if someone says that to you?
It's not really.
The answer is, then someone else could have done the same thing. So why did he say no one's going to do it? He just did it with some echo chamber with his magic in the desert. Anyone else could do it. So why did he put in his own book that no one else is going to do it if he himself would have just got away with it? Okay, we're going to stop now. Tomorrow we're going to carry on. Let's